We're in the middle of another attempt by the Yoga Vasistha to explain how all this apparent variety arises from the one Brahman. And it's doing it in straightforward Hindu metaphysics. And it's an interesting story, and it's quite good if we can somehow relate that metaphysics to our own psyche. And there's another teaching we're going to get here, which is a standard Hindu way of looking at things. It's in terms of what we might call psychological types. Vasistha continued, Ram, I shall now describe to you the divisions of beings into the best, the worst and the middling, as it happened in the beginning of this cycle of creation. The Indian mind is very, very fond of categorization, which is maybe what makes them quite good scientists. The first and foremost among the creatures are born of noble practices. They are naturally good and devoted to good deeds. They reach liberation in a few lifetimes. They are full of the quality of purity and light, and this is called Satva. Then there are those who are full of impurity, in whom the worldly habits are strong and variegated, who will perhaps reach liberation in 1,000 births. They are the least among the good. Among them there are those in whose case liberation itself is doubtful in this world cycle. They are beings of dense darkness. The middling type are the ones who are full of the quality of dynamism and desire, and that's called rajas. When such people are close enough to liberation that on their departure from this world they reach it, they have a mixture of rajas and sattva. But when the rajasic, that's the passionate desire tendency, is so strong that it takes a little longer to stimulate it, they are purely rajasic. But when the rajasic tendency is extremely dense, then it partakes of darkness, and this is tamas. In the case of those from whom liberation is so remote that it is doubtful, the quality of rajas partakes of the densest darkness. They who even after 1,000 births are still in darkness unawakened are known as beings of darkness, tamas. They may take a long time to reach liberation, but when this liberation seems to be at hand, then their tamas is mixed with sattva. If they are proceeding close to liberation, then their tamas is mixed with rajas. Then, even after 100 births, liberation is another 100 births away, they are full of tamas, and if liberation is doubtful, they are in dense darkness. And there's a note from the translator, Swami Venkatesananda here, saying, this chapter seems to suggest that sattva, rajas and tamas in themselves are not obstacles to liberation, but the further modifications by wrong thought and wrong action push liberation away. I don't think this passage is particularly useful. It's a way of describing, if you could, tendencies which are close or further, which are conducive to liberation, and tendencies which take you from liberation. The only thing I would say is what actually blocks awareness is belief. And the sattvic character, it tends to be the one that is full of belief. I sometimes feel that the people that are most unlikely to find insight are those people that are actually involved in some kind of spiritual path, because they've got definite ideas about what spirituality is. And these ideas are going to get in the way of any kind of insight. If you don't have any ideas, if you are just getting on with life, getting on with your job, or a bit of a hedonist, then you've actually got more chance of waking up, because you haven't really got anything in the way. Yeah, so I don't think this categorization of Tamas, Rajas and Satva is useful at all. All these beings have arisen in the absolute Brahman when there was just a slight disturbance in its equilibrium, even as waves arise on the surface of the ocean. Sometimes it's called a vibration. Here it's called a slight disturbance. Even as the space in a jar, the space in a room, and the space in a small hole are all integral parts of one cosmic space, all these are but the infinite being in which there are no parts, and as they arose in it, they merge in it. Thus, by the will of the infinite Brahman, all these seem to arise and then dissolve in it. So this is the great thing about the Yoga Vasistha. It's saying that after having done this threefold classification, it is saying that they're all non-different from absolute Brahman. And it relates it by analogy to space, space in a jar, space in a room. It's like, I can enclose some space here, and if I move my hands over here, is the enclosed space the same space that was over here originally? Have I moved the space from here to here? Or it's all just the one space anyway? And it's the same with consciousness and the so-called individualized consciousnesses. There's not different consciousnesses moving around. There's not different individualized consciousness moving around. It's only the one consciousness. And that allows us to cut through these notions of different psychological types, different beliefs, and awaken, or just turn our attention, our awareness to itself, and that itself is Brahman, the pure Brahman, which is not caught up in beliefs, it's not caught up in notions, it's not caught up in ideas about liberation. So nothing dissolves in the infinite Brahman. The individualized consciousness does not dissolve in the Brahman. The individualized consciousness is the Brahman. We just let go of these notions. We cut off the notions of the world appearance with the acts of investigation, as it said in the previous chapter.